Hi, I'm Abigail Pina de Hillig.
My name is Jessie Mandel.
I'm Elisa Stoddard.
My name is Anna Thomas.
I'm Matthew Weinstein. At the state capitol, there's lobbyists for every imaginable interest. Why shouldn't there be somebody there speaking up for kids, for the next generation?
I work with DACA recipients to ensure that a pathway to citizenship is met.
I work to advance policies that help all children and families in Utah access quality, affordable health coverage and care.
I manage the professional organization for physicians, for pediatricians, so that we can advocate for Utah children.
I do policy analysis and advocacy on a bunch of different issues, mostly juvenile justice reform and early childhood care and education, and throw in a little child welfare and immigrants' rights work too.
My name is Siria Alvarez Valle.
I'm Taylor Throne.
Martín Muñoz.
I conduct research about issues that affect children.
I research and advocate policies for immigrant families.
I compile state data that shows how our children in Utah are doing.
My name is Veronica Aguilera.
My name is Sarah Gunderson.
Hi, I'm Lynetta Fitisamanu. At Voices, I help our staff strategize and promote all the wonderful advocacy work we are doing.
I do communication work for healthcare and immigration.
I work behind the scenes to make sure that the advocacy work happens.
The work at Voices, we're actually trying to give a voice to the youngest population of individuals in our state, plus their families.
Children need advocates and are mostly voiceless, and they need adults to advocate on their behalf.
At my time at Voices, I've learned just how important it is to advocate for folks in the juvenile justice system, our immigrant folks, and make sure that kids in Utah are covered for health insurance.
I love working at Voices for Utah Children because I believe that children are our future, and I want to leave them a legacy that they can be successful in.
The reason I do my work with Voices is because I want less children to experience poverty.
Because I want to ensure that all children feel welcome in our state.
I believe every child in Utah deserves to grow up happy and healthy.
Because I believe that all children deserve their basic needs met in a safe and nurturing environment, and that all children have the ability to become their authentic selves.
I am really proud to be able to do work for the little guy, and there's no littler guy than the kids that live here in our state, and they deserve the same chance as everybody else to grow up happy and successful.
And that's what we get to work on every day together at Voices.
My name is Lonnie Main, and I will be your host this evening. I want to welcome everyone to the 36th anniversary of Voices for Utah Children, Children's Champion Awards. Voices for Utah Children works to make Utah a place where all children thrive. They start with one basic question: is it good for kids? Voices believe that every child deserves the opportunity to reach his or her full potential. I would like to introduce Earl Arnoldson, the board chair, to give opening remarks.
Hello, I am Earl Arnoldson, Chair of the Board of Directors at Voices for Utah Children. Welcome to our annual gala as we celebrate our 36th year of advocating for better lives and opportunities for young people of Utah. In the next hour, you will enjoy performances from several very talented and energetic youth groups. We will acknowledge local superstars whose work has made Utah a better and safer place to live. And you will meet the Voices for Utah Children family, who believe we can all work together toward a better world for our youth. Enjoy the evening.
I would like to introduce Abram Sherrod of NeighborWorks Salt Lake, who will present our Student Advocate Award.
Hi, my name is Abram Sherrod, and I work for NeighborWorks of Salt Lake. I am the NeighborWorks YouthWorks Program Director. It is my honor to have nominated Karen Sanchez-Garcia for the Voices of Utah Student Advocate Award because she displays a bunch of characteristics that we know that the students of the next generation are going to need to display in order to be successful. She's inquisitive. She always asks questions. She's always the first person to put her hands up when any question is asked in any classroom situation. She's always eager to learn and just gather as much information as possible. I know without a doubt that the next generation of youth are going to be able to do great things with leaders such as Karen, making sure that they put their best foot forward. So with that being said, congratulations, Karen.
My name is Karen Sanchez-Garcia. I'm a junior at Highland High School. I am very grateful for this opportunity, and I am extremely honored to be awarded this. A few years ago, I had the honor of serving as a Little Feathers Senior Princess alongside my sister. I am also part of the National Honor Society at my high school, which helps build our community and make it a better place. I am also part of the NeighborWorks Youth Works program, which is a program to help youth grow employment skills and financial skills. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm extremely honored, and I hope I can be the best advocate so far. Thank you.
I would like to introduce a founding member of Voices and last year's Alumni Award recipient, Irene Fisher, to present the award to this year's recipient.
I'm Irene Fisher. I'm here to help us remember the beginning years of Utah Children, now Voices for Utah Children. I was fortunate enough to be in action during the years when a lot of attention was being paid in the state to issues of child care, issues of health care, a lot of things that sound similar to what we're dealing with today. I was the director of the Lowell Benyon Community Service Center at the University of Utah, and we attracted some of the most engaged, thoughtful, active students to represent our issues to the legislature, to county, state boards of education, and other places. The way Gina came into the Benyon Center, she wanted a leadership position. She wanted to deal with issues of poverty, hunger. Gina, I'm glad to be here with you today. It's a fine opportunity to present this award to Gina, Cornia, in recognition of the years of involvement in community issues. Thank you.
Thank you to Voices for Utah Children and the alumni who selected me for this year's award. I am humbled. I want to acknowledge all of my colleagues and mentors doing great advocacy, not only for children but other vulnerable communities. I learn from you every day and lean on your expertise and passion for this work. I also want to recognize my coworkers at Utahns Against Hunger for their dedicated work on behalf of Utah children and the difference their commitment makes in the lives of Utah families. Thank you.
Please welcome Chelsea Guevara from West Jordan, Utah. As a Salvadorian Caucasian American, her work focuses on examination of overlapping cultures, mixed identity, and Latinx and immigrant struggles. Chelsea is currently studying at the University of Utah while also competing in and presenting poetry at local venues. She represented the state of Utah on the stage of the International Women of the World Poetry Slam Competition in March 2020.
English and Spanish. 2-syllable, 7-letter words are turned outstretched hands the day I was born. They molded my diction, guided my tongue to take its first steps, and once I got older, grabbed tattoo needles. Used the ink to etch their letters on my taste buds, and though the flavors are different, they're shaped the same, and my mouth is a bowl of alphabet soup. The same 26 letters take mixed up positions on my lips, confuses one side of my culture while communicating with the other. Therefore, English and Spanish both find themselves living next to each other in each of my sentences. My bilingualism, the universities and esteemed employers, they tell me it is an asset. A key to opening doors, a stepping stone on a path to greater opportunities I don't even know yet. But if I'm salting French fries or cooking hamburger meat, then some expect the alphabet soup to be segregated, expect me to pick out the parts that they don't like, and most often it's the ones with flavors they've never even tried. They jump to remind us Latinos that this is America and we speak English here, but in the same moment turn to their children, encouraging them to take foreign language classes. Really, they mean European language classes, because I can ask parlez-vous français and be admired, but if I want to know si vos hablas español, that admiration is turned silver spoons. Not used to enjoy the meal of dialect set before them, but to be implanted in their eyes, sharpened with every narrowing of their eyelids, because their looks can't quite kill, but at the very least can be shot at our tongues in hopes of severing the foreign words straight from our palates. They do this not due to the rhythm the words dance to on their eardrums, but the colors that swim in front of their eyes when they hear it spoken. That's how I know that languages like French are cream, pure and white and expensive, holds the sound of a choir as if water falls from the mouth, and they stand in awe because it's seen and heard as beautiful, as it should be. But Spanish is dark brown coffee beans. They come from the fields and don't cost a pretty penny. When they fall from our mouths and scatter on the floor, I know all they hear is a cacophony, but to me, it is a symphony. It's the sound of song notes plucked straight from the mouths of guitarristas singing about all kinds of love. The same notes that flow down from the speakers, join hands and dance with the vibrations of laughter coming from my family. Family crowded around sweet bread and cups of conversation, smiling mouths full of coffee beans. So to those who don't like the way that I speak, the way that I roll my R's, or the way that my B's and V's all blend together, the way that I love the flavor of a language that stems so far from here, let me tell you that all those opportunities I'm finding along the way, they're asking for my alphabet soup to be brought to the potluck. I can't make you hear how beautiful it sounds though, or make you understand it, but it's here to stay. So I'm willing to share the recipe with you if you'd only give me the opportunity.
Now, to present the Community Partner Award is Myra Sedano, the Executive Director of CU, our 2020 award recipient.
Hello, community members, allies, and friends. I'm Myra Sedano, a community organizer, and I also have the privilege of being the Executive Director of Comunidades Unidas. Comunidades Unidas is a local nonprofit here in the state of Utah. We've been around for 22 years, and our mission is to empower the Latinx community to recognize their potential and become a positive force for change in the larger community. Today, I'm beyond honored to present the 2021 Community Partner Award to Gonzalo Palza and El Centro de la Familia. El Centro de la Familia has been around for more than 46 years, and they have touched the lives of many children and family in Utah, Nevada, and Colorado. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you, Centro de la Familia, for paving the way for so many of us. Gracias por crear el camino para muchísimos de nosotros. Felicidades. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayra. Thank you so much. Centro de la Familia and Comunidades Unidas have been sister agencies for a long time. We look forward to working with you a lot more in the future. Congratulate you for having won the award last year, and I again thank you for extending it to Centro de la Familia this year. My name is Gonzalo Palza, and I'm the CEO of Centro de la Familia. Centro de la Familia, as many of you know, it's an agency that's been around for many years. It started in 1975, thanks to some of the Chicano troublemakers of the time as a result of the social movements. Ever since, Centro has been working with the community in communities of need and serving the underserved populations in Utah. Today, Centro is a much larger agency. It is serving 1,200 children with comprehensive services in Utah, Colorado, and Nevada. On behalf of all of us, on behalf of the more than 400 employees, I would like to thank Voices for Utah Children for this award. I believe this award it's important because it helps elevate, it helps amplify the work that Centro does in the community. The work that Centro has been doing for many years now, almost half a century, is not always recognized, because the work we do is in isolated communities in rural Utah, and the work that we do is quiet, but it's constant. We serve children 8 hours a day, every day, full year. We provide them with classroom developmental activities, health, and one very important part of what we do is work with the parents. One of our core competencies is parent engagement. We strongly believe that if parents are engaged in their children's education at an early age, these children will be saved and be able to read at grade level. That's one of our goals, is to have every child that we serve graduate from our program, hit elementary school, reading at grade level, and of course, preferably in 2 languages. So thank you, comunidades, thank you, Voices, for this award. And I want to close by sharing with you an experience I had last week in Colorado, in a small town called in Greeley, about an hour away from Denver. We went to visit one of our centers, and as always, we decided to have a surprise, unannounced audit of our bus loading and unloading protocols for safety. And so we were there early in the morning, 7:30. It was a beautiful morning. There was sun, and it was chilly, and we were standing there waiting for the bus to arrive. And slowly, the teachers came out and stood with us, and the bus arrived. And when the bus arrived, the doors opened, and first came the toddlers, the infant and toddlers, and then came the preschool children out of the bus. But all of them, each of those children, as soon as the doors opened and as soon as they saw us and saw their teachers, their faces lit up. Big eyes and smiles. Every single one of those children was happy to be there. They were happy to see their children, happy to see their teachers. And the teachers were calling them by their names and welcoming them to the centers. That was what made my day that day, and that's what makes my day every day. That was one of our 20 centers, and I believe this happens in each of those 20 centers in our tri-state area. These children are happy to be with us. They look forward to being in our service, and we love to do that. And I love to do that, and I will always do that for the children. And as I say, and many of you have heard me say, as our founders, I am now the troublemaker delegate for Centro de la Familia. And we will do whatever we need to do for those children so that they can be happy in our care and be able to read at grade level when they hit elementary school. So again, thank you, Mayra. Thank you, Mo, and your team, and for this wonderful award. And I look forward to continue to work and collaborate with you in the future. Thank you.
Let's all sit back and enjoy the youth dance group from Ngoma e Africa Cultural Center in Provo. At this time, I would like to introduce the 2020 Children's Champion Award winner, Nicole Salazar Hall. I would like to point out that this award will now be known as the Roz McGee Children's Champion Award in recognition of the first executive director and lifelong advocate and hellraiser, Roz McGee.
Hi, I'm Nicole Salazar. I am the 2020 Voices for Utah Children Children's Champion Award recipient. I am so honored and humbled to award this year's 2021 Roz McGee Voices for Utah Children's Children's Champion Award to Dr. Andy Pavia and Dr. Angela Dunn. The Roz McGee Children's Champion Award is awarded to individuals who utilize their education, their expertise, and their valuable time in making changes and making Utah a better place for Utah's children. Dr. Andy Pavia is the Infectious Disease Director for Pediatrics at Primary Children's Hospital, and Dr. Angela Dunn is the former state Utah epidemiologist and current Executive Director at the Salt Lake County Health Department. I am so humbled to be in such amazing company. Both Dr. Andy Pavia and Dr. Angela Dunn gave us guidance, information, and gave us hope through the earliest and darkest days of the pandemic. They helped guide leadership, policy, and ensured that all Utahns received adequate information to be able to navigate such a difficult time. Without them, without their expertise, without their integrity, Utah would not be where it is. And I would like to give a special congratulations to this year's Voices for Utah Children Community Partner Award recipient, Centro de la Familia de Utah. I am on the board of Centro de la Familia de Utah, and I've been there for several years, and I can say wholeheartedly, they are an amazing organization, a well-run organization, and provide an amazing service to so many children throughout Utah. Like my father before me, who was on the board, we are huge supporters of Centro de la Familia de Utah. And now we're going to hear some comments from Dr. Andy Pavia and Dr. Angela Dunn. Thank you.
I want to thank Voices for Utah Children for this award. I had the honor of knowing and working with Roz McGee, so I'm really honored and humbled to receive this award that's named after her. I'm also honored to share it with Dr. Dunn, whose tireless work on behalf of Utah has been nothing short of inspiring, and whose grace under fire has been impeccable. It's been traditional to thank people who made the work possible, and I do want to thank our incredible team at Primary Children's and the University of Utah, too many to call out by name. But I do especially want to thank our infectious disease and infection prevention teams. I also want to thank my wife for her support, for putting up with the long hours, the endless weeks, and the calls deep into the night. But more than thanking people, I feel I really should share this award with the countless people who've done so much during this pandemic. This award really belongs to the doctors, the nurses, and respiratory therapists who've worked so hard and so long under incredibly difficult conditions. It belongs to the infectious disease doctors and the public health teams who've investigated, researched, and analyzed all in real time and helped us understand a new and complex and terrifying disease. It belongs to the educators who worked so hard to keep our kids safe and to keep them in school and keep them learning. It belongs to the scientists who developed incredibly safe and effective vaccines and did so in record time. But it also belongs to the countless ordinary people who've lost so much, but who also did what was needed to help keep their families and their neighbors safe. COVID-19 has taken an enormous toll on the children of Utah. Much of it was preventable. That would have made Roz furious. We did important work here in Salt Lake with UDOH under Dr. Dunn, with the Salt Lake County Health Department, the Granite School District, the CDC, and researchers from my own division led by Dr. Adam Hirsch that provided the kind of strong evidence that showed we could keep kids in school safely if we had universal masking and other layers of prevention. That's why it's so infuriating that we're not using the lessons we learned to protect our kids here in Utah and to keep them safe and in school. Kids are not immune to COVID. That's simply a lie that we use to excuse our own inaction. With the emergence of the Delta variant, kids have been hit particularly hard. Almost 10,000 Utah children were infected last month alone. Almost 1 in 4 infections is now among school-aged children. In August and September, we've seen more children hospitalized in the U.S. than at any other time during the pandemic, despite the fact that we now have vaccines for older children and the knowledge about how to prevent spread and to keep schools safe. As a result of all this, education's been disrupted, parents have missed work, children have suffered lingering symptoms, and at least 540 children have died. More than 140,000 children have lost a parent or caregiver, according to a recent study. Much of this did not have to happen, and it does not need to continue. Masks and vaccines should never be political symbols. Instead, they're critical tools that we need to bring our life back to normal for our children and for everyone in our community. We need to do better to look out for each other. That means that each one of us needs to take steps needed to prevent getting infected, and more importantly, to prevent passing the infection on, regardless of our own perception of personal risk. Only toddlers insist, "You're not the boss of me," when it comes at the expense of others. But sadly, this has become a rationale not to do what we know needs to be done. We need more patience and compassion for each other. We need leadership by ordinary people, by teachers and business owners, and we need leadership by leaders who are willing to risk their own political capital to protect children and the most vulnerable among us. That's what Roz McGee fought for so passionately, and it was the kind of leadership she embodied. I hope we can do better. We must do better. And I want to thank you once again for this honor.
I am honored and humbled to be the co-honoree of the 2021 Roz McGee Children's Champion Award. To be recognized by Voices for Utah Children as a fighter for what is good and right is certainly a career highlight. Voices for Utah Children is the preeminent organization for our state leaders when confronting issues impacting children. They bring expertise and solutions to the table and have had a demonstrable impact on the health and safety of our children in our state. I am proud to be their partner. And being in the same category as Nicole Salazar Hall, last year's recipient, and Dr. Andy Pavia, my co-honoree this year, is inspiring. Nicole tackles issues of monumental importance and equally monumental difficulty. With her recent appointment to the Commission on Racial Equity and Policing, I know she will continue affecting powerful societal change towards inclusivity. And Dr. Andy Pavia, he's my mentor, my guru, and he's been my North Star for several public health issues. Whenever I've had a hunch that policy is going in a direction that may be harmful to the health of our state, Dr. Pavia is there to confirm my gut feeling. His steadfast tenacity and resilience is admirable. He has helped me become a more strong, capable, and confident public health leader. And I've learned a lot about Roz McGee over the past several weeks. I understand what Voices for Utah Children, Nicole Salazar Hall, and Dr. Andy Pavia and I have in common. We all use our knowledge, experience, and work to provide a voice to those who might otherwise be ignored. We ensure that inequities in our society are not swept under the table or put on a shelf. We put a spotlight on hard issues that need to be confronted, because we know all too well that our future will reflect how we treat the youngest and most vulnerable among us. I am proud to be receiving an award named after a Hellraiser and be in good company among fellow Hellraisers. May we all tap into the fire inside of us to help those who need us most. Because if not us, who?
I am excited to introduce the One Voice Children's Choir, which is comprised of children ages 4 through 18 living along the Wasatch Front.
It's everything I am and what I'm not and all I'm trying to be. This is the part where I spit it all out and you decide what you think of me. I'm not trying to be complicated, I'm never waiting to get the last laugh. but I've been handing out benefits of the doubt, and I like a little bit back. It's just a little voice, and if you're listening, sometimes a little voice can say the biggest things. It's just my little voice that I've been missing. Looking over the precious moments, it hurts, don't it? They can cut both ways. No amount of remembering the better things can make the bad ones go away. But I've been broken and the ones to blame. So my savior of self-defense taught me to sing what I can't say. It's just a little voice, and if you're listening, sometimes a little voice can say the biggest things. It's just my little voice that I've been missing. Little voice. I will be loud, I'm coming out to tell you words are not enough. I will be loud, I'm coming out to tell you noise is not enough. I will be loud, I'm coming out to tell you words are not enough. I will be loud, I'm coming out to tell you noise is not enough. It's the reason you whisper you love her alone. We've been handed the mountain tops to see from, and we still die. It's just a little voice, and if you're listening, sometimes a little voice can say the biggest things. It's just my little voice that I've been missing. It's just my little voice that I've been missing. It's just my little voice that I've been missing.
I am pleased to introduce our keynote speaker for the evening, Elliot Haspel. He is a nationally recognized child and family policy expert and commentator with specialties in early childhood and education issues, as well as the linkage between child and climate. He is the author of Crawling Behind America's Child Care Crisis and How to Fix It. Elliot has appeared on television as an analyst, including on the PBS NewsHour with Judy Woodruff, and his writings have appeared in a wide variety of top publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Atlantic. Elliot is regularly sought out by journalists and has been quoted in such mediums as the New York Times, NPR, and Time Magazine. He has been the keynote speaker at several early childhood events and has been asked to moderate major panel discussions, including one on childcare hosted by Save the Children as part of the 2020 Democratic National Convention. We are thrilled to have Elliot joining us this evening to provide some insights into the current state of childcare in the country and Utah.
Good evening. I want to take this opportunity to welcome Elliot Haspel, the author of Crawling Behind, as our keynote speaker this evening. We're going to do this a little differently than the normal keynote, where we're going to have a Q&A on topics related to child stipends. So we're going to kick it right off with the question, what is a child stipend?
Thanks, and thanks so much for having me. So I can't be there in person. So a child stipend is
very basically a large sum of money that parents can use to acquire the childcare that they need and prefer. And so the idea is that all children, all families with children under the age of 5 would have access to this funding, and potentially parents with children school age could also have access to some amount of funding, and that the funding would be at a high enough level to put enough money into the childcare system to ensure high enough wages for practitioners and to ensure that programs are able to operate sustainably. So it's basically a very sort of choice-based system, but unlike some of the proposals that have been put out around just give parents money, it's actually putting enough new permanent money into the system to allow for a childcare system to work for families, to work for practitioners, to work for children, and then ultimately to work for society and employers generally.
So in the system that you're proposing, which I am supportive of, is who would be eligible to receive the stipend in terms of, would there be a cap on the number of children? Would there be a income cutoff in your views?
Yeah, so in my views, this would be universal. So this would be universal and accessible to all parents on a per child basis. And the reason for that is, again, we know that when you're trying to access childcare, the family needs are not so neat. They get very messy. And so, if you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, the kind of care you might need or want for that 2-year-old and care you might need or want for that 4-year-old may differ. And so by making sure that parents can have this purchasing power and that there's enough money flowing into the system to allow for these choices to really exist in a functional way. What we don't want to happen, I'll pause and say, is that sometimes when you hand these kind of quasi vouchers out and they're not at a high enough level for there to be all these choices, what you're doing is you're handing families a voucher for milk, and then they go to the store and there's no milk. That doesn't do them any good. And so we have to have this at a high enough level. So as you say, like what I propose in the book is basically $15,000, a year per child and then for the school-aged kids, you consider severely reducing that. Maybe it's $1,000 to help pay for before and after school care, for summer care, things like that. And you can also, doesn't have to be exactly the same for every single setting. So for example, you could set a stipend that differs depending on if you're going using a family childcare program, a childcare center, right? These are programs that have different operating costs, and so would need different amounts of money in order to be able to provide high quality care, be able to pay their teachers well. And then one other piece of this, which we can get into if you want a little bit later, is it actually also lets you offer what's known as a home care allowance. You can basically let stay-at-home parents take a version of the stipend for providing primary care for their own children, which is in and of itself a form of labor. So he really does let you have a very pluralistic system, but you're giving them real choices as opposed to some proposals out there to just give a couple $1,000s here and there, which just isn't you. Then you're giving out the vouchers for milk that doesn't exist.
Great. And I would like to come back later when we talk about Utah specifically regarding the stay-at-home parent. How would you see the role of the state government versus the federal government in the funding application?
So a lot of this really depends on what's going to happen with the federal government's, the Build Back Better plan that's currently under consideration. So if they do pass that, then I think every state's going to have to make a decision about whether they're going to basically opt in to the new child care funding. And that child care funding, I think it's perfectly viable. It's much more supply side in the sense that it ends up with the state basically paying the quality of care to programs directly. It does also have some flexibility in there for choices, and it does explicitly name things like family child care programs, like programs provided by faith communities. So it is still pluralistic, but it's certainly more of a supply side than a demand side sort of plan, which so if that does pass, then I think there would need to be some negotiation about what that would look like in a state like Utah. If that doesn't pass, or if it's severely curtailed in these negotiations, then it's going to really be incumbent on the states to step up, because as you well know, like the child care system in every state is really struggling right now. We are seeing huge amounts of closures, huge staffing shortages, which are causing classrooms to sit empty for no other reason that there aren't staff to actually serve the children there. That provides awful downward pressure on families, on the economy, because it keeps people able from being to work, and on children who rely on stable, reliable relationships with their caregivers in order to thrive. So, one way or another, we're going to need to take some significant action. I think the idea of the stipends will be especially important if the federal government does not step up in this moment, or if some states choose to not take advantage of the federal funding that may be on offer.
I want to seg a little bit into the economics of it, but touching back on the federal proposal at the moment, even with that, I would think there would need to be some subsidies coming from the state level, because if you look at a state like Utah, which we'll get into a little more in detail a little later, but the average cost of childcare right now is about $10,200 plus per child on average, and our workers are generally paid less than $10 an hour. What do you see as the economic benefits of a child stipend to the overall economy of a state?
Yeah, so there are several major economic benefits to putting a stipend in place, to making sure that we have a functional childcare system. One is just the actual childcare system itself. So, that's tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people, practitioners and sort of kind of contractors and clients and providers of material that's all involved in that sort of ecosystem around the service provision of childcare, which is right now done on a shoestring budget. So just by putting that in place and allowing wages to rise, you're going to start by putting all of those people up more towards the middle class, providing them with family sustaining wages themselves. You're going to see more economic output in terms of the programs, purchasing materials, high quality food, things like that. And then the major economic benefit comes when you think about the advantage to employers and to the labor force. So we know is that there are a substantial number of workers, and we should name it, these are mostly women, who are home not by choice, but because they are not able to find a childcare setup that is affordable for them, or they're not able to access a slot because there's no slot available near them, and so therefore they're not working. Similarly, even for those who are working, research is very clear that the childcare breakdowns cause all sorts of issues in terms of absenteeism or reduced productivity, retention issues. There's lots of turnover. It becomes harder to recruit people. And we're seeing this across the board in sort of the labor market in a more macro sense. But what I've been emphasizing is that for childcare, this isn't a pandemic artifact. This isn't going to get better as the sort of pandemic wanes, because the other low-wage industries that childcare was competing against, childcare pays an average of, I think in Utah, I looked it up, it's like $10 or $11 an hour is the median. Whereas when you see Amazon, Target, McDonald's, these other sort of industries are offering $15 an hour plus benefits, it's basically impossible to compete. Who would you argue should go into childcare right now? Who could you say, like, you're a high school senior, you're a college senior, like go into this career in childcare where you're going to end up making $25,000 a year with very few opportunities for advancement, and it's going to be really stressful because the program is going to be short-staffed. It's a pretty hard sell, and so the economic benefits there are the benefits, and there's also the opportunity cost. If we continue to not act with something like a stipend, then what we're going to see is there be fewer and fewer childcare options. It's going to basically spiral down. Prices are going to inevitably rise up, and it's going to cause all sorts of economic pain for states.
And with those economic benefits and also the societal benefits, and maybe you could tie the two of them together, because for the families that would be receiving the stipend, there's a large portion of the families that would actually have an economic benefit very clearly just with the funds received, but also in their mobility upward, as well as the societal benefits for both the child and the family. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, middle-class families, nationwide are paying an average of 14% of their income for childcare, right? And then that's, if you have one kid, right? If you have, again, you might have 2 or even 3 children between, the ages of birth and 5. And that is such a boulder on the back of families, because this is especially during, people are not having kids during what is sort of their prime earning years, right? They're already, their income's not usually that high. And then there are trade-offs when you don't have that income, and that income is being eaten up with childcare costs. That's income that otherwise would be going to things like building out your savings, building retirement, getting ready to purchase a home, doing maintenance on, your car so you don't have to pay down the road on it, like all of those things which add up. If you think about, there was an economist who sort of made this argument. I think it's brilliant. Like when you think about all those exercises we did as kids around and the high schoolers learning about compound interest, learning the compound effects of starting to invest in, in retirement in your 20s, because it's going to build up to really big numbers by, your 60s. It's really the same thing. All of this money that we're spending on childcare, because we treat it like a free market service, is money that these young families need for other things. And the consequences also compound. And then the societal benefits too is this is huge impacts on child development. And so that's both in sense of the early access to high quality early childhood experiences themselves, which we know help children develop the executive functioning that they need to be successful later in school and later in life. And also in terms of family stability. So the stress that it causes when families are unable to find or easily afford childcare is massive. And what we know is that one of the worst things you can do for child development is sort of create this hot box of stress. And so again, what adding a stipend would do is really be a pressure release. And so we'd see all sorts of positive benefits to the families themselves and to the children within them. And then it really would reverberate for generations.
Touching a little bit on, or maybe a lot, on Utah specifically, one of the things I liked was the concept of the universal stipend, because even though the data is showing we have more families with both parents in the workforce, there's also a belief in Utah, a strong belief that there should be a parent at home with the child. That being said, the most recent data from MIT's wage calculator is that a family of 4 in Utah with both parents in the workforce would need to be making a median income of about $84,000 in order to cover all their costs, of which $15,000 would be childcare. Why do you think, taking all that into consideration, Utah could be, politics aside, a very interesting place to start this conversation?
Yeah, so what I really appreciate about Utah, right, is an example where that pluralism comes into play. So what we know, and I think we should say out loud more often, is that staying home with your kid during their early years is also a perfectly viable way for them to develop healthily. Like that should be an option that we support. And so just as there are parents, and again, we're mostly talking about this here because that's just the society that we have at the moment. So there are mothers who are home now who would like to be working, who can't because of childcare. There are mothers who are working who would like to be home more hours than they are, and fathers too. I will say that, for myself as the dad of 2 young daughters, like I would like to be able to, have more time at home with them in their formative years. And so what a sort of stipend does when you let the parents take it as a sort of a stay-at-home stipend as well, is you're supporting that choice. This is not actually, this is an idea that is implemented in several countries, actually in the Northern European nations that we tend to more associate with being kind of on the left. Several of them, like Finland and Norway, do have these home care allowances, basically saying, like, look, if you're going to opt out of the publicly funded childcare system, that's fine. We still have an interest in making sure that society is healthy families, healthy children. And so we want to be able to support you. So, you could debate, like, do they get the exact same amount for, that you would like, what is the amount of the stipend for staying home? But those are sort of design questions. But I think philosophically, if we're saying we should support parents in raising their young children because society has an interest in that, then I think that extends to paid stay-at-home parents. And so whether or not, we use a stipend, whether or not we end up with sort of a more supply side, system off of the federal bill being considered, I still think we need to be talking about a home care allowance, which in this case would just be basically self-paying of a stipend. And I'll also say you can easily extend that to kith and kin. So, using the stipend to help compensate, a grandmother or an aunt or a relative who's providing primary care to the children as well.
Great. I'm interested, you and I've talked briefly about this, but what are some of the pushback issues you've heard since the publication of the book or in presentations you've given?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the main pushback I would say I've heard on using the stipend model is that it can create some variance and uncertainty in the child care supply. And what I mean by that is, if basically the money is following the child or the family, right? So you're saying, here's $15,000. Like, okay, I'm going to go to Center X in Salt Lake City. Here's my $15,000, that you're going to use to pay for your teachers. And then I get a job, in Park City or in, St. George, like I'm going to go move now. And then does that money go away? And then you were just using that money to make payroll. So that's, going to create some instability in the system. And I think that's valid. And I think there are two ways you can kind of get around that. One is you make sure that the credit or the stipend amount is high enough that programs are operating with a sort of a healthy sort of operating margin that they can deal with some normal variance. The other way you do it is you could create basically a hybrid model where, the state or provides some amount of, what's considered base aid in kind of a higher education model, right? Like here's just a baseline amount of funding, and then the rest of it comes through the stipends and through the parents choosing to send their kids there, again, just to kind of ward against the sort of unintended consequences of having kind of a purely sort of voucherized system. So I think that's one criticism, which if I was writing it again, I think I would be more explicit about the need to backstop that issue.
Great. And before we get some final thoughts, you reminded me of something in the book, which was your idea that if a state was the state to take the lead on this, you believe that they would actually be able to attract workers, attract families to move into that state. You touched on it a little bit with the idea of moving to Park City or moving to St. George. Could you elaborate just a little bit on that, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think right now it is rough out there for parents. And as you mentioned, this is an issue where the pain point penetrates the middle class and frankly penetrates into the upper middle class because, of how expensive it is and how hard it is to find slots. So if the first state that really truly makes childcare affordable, that makes sure those choices are available, that parents are going to be able to attract talent, I think, at incredible rates. So if you think about it, if you're, I'm on the East Coast, but let's say that I wanted to move to the West, and I was debating between, Salt Lake City and Denver, and one of those states was going to offer me $15,000, in a stipend to help pay for childcare for my, 4-year-old, like that would probably seriously influence my decision. And so that's, I think, when I think about the sort of competitive boon of the first state to really get this right, is going to reap a whole lot of benefits when it comes to, again, the economy and the overall sort of kind of reputation, frankly, of the state.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us this evening and taking time out of your life to on what I think is one of the most important topics we're facing in the country at the moment. I was just wondering if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share, and I look forward to working with you as we move forward on this issue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mo. I would say my final thought is, I don't think of all the issues, and we have a very polarized society, and I know that, but all the issues, I'd like to think that the child care is one where we can get bipartisan and truly some transpartisan agreement on it. We've seen this in the past. You mentioned this in my book. I cite Rick Santorum, runner up for the GOP presidential nomination, was a big supporter of child care, right? The Trump White House held a child care their summit in December of 2019. This is actually not, the big businesses, the Chamber of Commerce have been, vocal supporters of this. And so I think this is truly an issue where it doesn't know kind of partisan bounds, like, whether you're on the right or the left or anywhere in between, childcare is something you have to reckon with as a family with young children. And it's very difficult, whether you're in an urban area or a rural area. It's something you have to reckon with, and it's difficult to find. And so I do think that we have this generational moment right now where we're finally paying attention. We're finally acknowledging not just the brain science of child development, but the impacts on the families and the impacts on the economy more broadly of handling and coming up with a real childcare system where we truly haven't had one in all of American history. And so, I think the stipends make a really interesting model for Utah in particular. I think we're going to have to pay close attention to what's happening at the federal government level, because obviously it's always a question of money. But either way, I just want to say I appreciate you all. I appreciate the time and attention and work being put into this, because we have the opportunity to really have 2021 and sort of the next couple of years be a generational pivot point that I think is going to really benefit our society for decades to come.
Well, that's a great way to end the thoughts. And I just want to share with everybody, I do have the copy of the book sitting right here as I've been going there, get it focused in a little bit. But if anybody's interested in hearing more from Elliot or where they can actually get the book, and we do have some copies of the book, so first come, first serve. The information will be in the chat room, so please click on it and find out more and join us in this effort. So again, thank you, Elliot, for joining us, and look forward to the future.
Thanks so much, Mel.
To conclude the evening, I would like to introduce Voices Executive Director Mo Hickey for closing remarks.
Welcome to the 2021 Voices for Utah Children Awards. I want to start by thanking all our sponsors whose generosity and support help make this evening, as well as all the work we do throughout the year, possible. I want to thank all of you who have joined us this evening. It is great to see so many of you virtually, and I cannot wait until we're able to meet again. So many of you have partnered with us this past year, and I am so grateful and humbled to work beside you. I want to thank the Voices Board of Directors who allow us to do the work that is necessary to improve the lives of children in Utah. I want to thank last year's award winners, Irene, Myra, and Nicole, for joining us this evening to present this year's awards. I want to congratulate Karen, Gina, all the team at Centro de la Familia, Andy and Angela. You all inspire me more than you will ever know, and I speak for all of us at Voices when I say that you have been shining lights in a challenging time, and we are proud to raise hell with you anytime. I want to take a moment to recognize our recently retired Deputy Director, Terry Haven, who gave 25 years of service to this organization and will be missed. I want to thank the team at Voices, Abigail, Matthew, Veronica, Lynetta, Anna, Syriac, Taylor, Alyssa, Martine, and Jesse, our new Deputy Director. This is the best team I have had the honor to work with. They are passionate, bright, caring people who work tirelessly on behalf of all the children in our state. They inspire and motivate me every day and make this the best job I have had in my career. I generally exercise every morning early and try to use that time to contemplate the work that needs to be done that day. As many team members can attest, this can lead to great ideas and some that should not see the light of day. On the morning I was preparing these remarks, there were two words that kept popping up: grateful and motivated. I have addressed the grateful part, and now I want to share why I am motivated. I am motivated because this is the most critical time for our children in my lifetime, and we as a state must decide what it is we truly value. We constantly hear that we have a great economy, which by certain metrics is true. However, what is the point of a great economy if not to lift those less fortunate or needing assistance? As Robert Louis Stevenson said, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant." This is the time to plant the seeds of tomorrow for all our children. As Andy pointed out in his remarks, Roz would be infuriated by the lack of leadership during the pandemic, and I wholeheartedly agree. She would be equally upset at the lack of investment in our kids' futures. I've been told many times that Voice's agenda is too bold, too liberal, or too expensive. I find these depictions short-sighted and, quite frankly, insulting. We are advocating for affordable and accessible childcare, quality pre-K, optional enhanced kindergarten, 100% coverage for health insurance, improved oral and mental health services, a juvenile justice system that works to support children, a pathway to citizenship for DACA cardholders, and access to benefits that will improve the lives of children and families. I realize that there is a cost associated with all of these, but there is a higher cost for the inertia which we'll be paying for years to come. The cost can be funded by a tax structure that is fair, progressive, and structured to address the societal challenges for which taxes were intended. This is the time to come together and focus on actual issues affecting our children, not issues that are made up or exaggerated which take away valuable time and resources and accomplish nothing but sowing division and harming our children. This is the time to come together to focus on the actual issues. This is the time to support the needs of all our children, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual identity, or status. This is the time to unite and to let our elected officials know that the most important asset we have is our children, and it is time to invest in Utah kids. This is the time to follow the legacy of Roz McGee and raise hell on behalf of children. To quote Ted Lasso, if you care about someone and you got a little love in your heart, there ain't nothing you can't get through together. We can do this together. Thanks again for joining us, and please stay a few more minutes and turn on your microphones and cameras so that we can all give one final round of applause for all our award recipients. Thank you.